Oh, there's Seth.
Hey, Seth.
Hey, Seth.
Can we hear him?
Hey, Seth. Charlie Rose here.
Seth, we don't get to hear you.
On air.
All right, we are on air now, so let's start this. This is the 9 to 5 happy hour. Seth, maybe we can't hear him. All right, he's just going to be our blurry guy for the day. So let me actually
comment when he has something to say, but other than that, he's not going to be talking.
Okay, well let me get the link really quick then. At least see if we can get that out if we want to do that. Give me 1 second. So let me give that to. All right, now I have to hear myself. All right, let's start out and let's talk about first Apple's financial results, which are coming up pretty soon. So, Mark, I was talking to you about this, and there's no new products that have really come out besides kind of the quick Retina bump for the MacBooks and the 128 gigabyte iPad. But otherwise, there really haven't been any new products since the last financial results came out. So, Mark, what is your opinion on really what that means for Apple in the past 3 months?
It's going to be interesting to see because there hasn't really been many quarters before or many Q2s before Apple didn't announce anything. Like I'm thinking about the past few years, Apple had a solid Q2 last year. They had the iPad 3rd Gen. They had what else did they have? They had a few Macs and other stuff going on. So, and Q2 is actually a nice quarter for them in 2012. And in previous years, they had other big launches. So, we'll have to see. At the same time, even though they didn't announce anything new, they had some new, they expanded their rollouts like into China and whatnot with the 5 and like the LTE or cellular versions of the iPad. So. That was okay. So, we'll have to see. I think people are still buying what they released last year. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. But, of course, there's going to be a major drop from the Q1 because that was the holiday quarter where they did release everything.
Mike, if you think – so there's always been where Apple comes out with some sort of a product or some sort of an announcement the day before the results. So if you see one product coming out the day before being announced at least, what do you think that would be?
At this point, I'm honestly not even sure. I mean, we're hearing so many different things from them, like watches and TVs and stuff like that. I have no idea what they're really planning for the near future. I think that they may be trying all of that stuff out for at some point this year, but as far as what they're going to do in the near future, I have no idea.
Yeah, my guess would be. Yeah, my guess would be that if there was like a day before the financial announcement, what product would they release? My guess would be an iPad update. I mean, that feels like it can't be a huge this year. That's something that they could push out pretty easily. Or maybe
so what kind of an iPad update are you talking about?
I mean, possibly specs. It wouldn't be crazy for the iPad to get a faster processor than the iPhone. That always kind of feels weird that your iPhone is faster than your iPad for a few months sometimes. So that wouldn't be crazy, but I think more realistically, probably maybe like a Mac line update, spec wise.
I think it would be a Mac update if it was going to be something. I don't think it'll be the iPad because they just did the iPad.
Are you talking about for this month?
They always issue the iPad now, though.
I mean, what is there to update? They did. I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, I think if they were going to do some sort of a spec update, they would have done that with the Retina.
I mean, the only thing that hasn't been touched within 6 months is the Mac Pro, and Cook said that's like in late 2013.
I thought he said spring.
No, he died.
Was the Mac Mini recently updated? Oh, yeah, it was.
October. Everything was in October. So I don't think we're going to see any new Macs this month. This is like such a software year because they really did all the hardware stuff last year. So, I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's talk about their profits, their potential profits. So, the U.S. market share for the iPhone has been up, according to some of the statistics that came out yesterday. So, do you see that the profits, of course, even when Apple has the best profits in the world, the stock tends to dip down. But do you think, Mike, let's go with you first. What do you think about the profits for Apple this quarter?
They've gone up every single quarter in the past long as I can remember, they're just going to go up, and everybody's going to complain about it.
The profits fell. I think.
Haven't the profits gone up every time as well? Or no, they haven't. The revenues have.
The revenues have, but we're talking about profits. See, my opinion is, like, a lot of people were concerned, a lot of the analysts and investors, because profits did go down marginally last year in context, because they redesigned everything. And when you put out a hardware redesign, so many, and ramping up so many new production scales, your profit margins will naturally go down. So I think had these products, they've been out already for 6 months or so, many of these products. So as Apple has produced more of that same design for the last 6 months, the margins in terms of their profit off the revenues are going to gradually go up production round after production round. So I think the profits might go up this quarter. And for the rest of this year, the iPad mini, the next iPad mini update, it's rumored to have the same form factor as the first generation iPad mini, regardless if they put in the higher resolution display. The next phone is a 5S, which is going to have the same design as the 6th generation iPhone 5. And a bunch of the Macs were redesigned last year, so I doubt that those are going to get new designs this year, aside from the Mac Pro. And so when you really look at it, they're going to have 2 product redesigns this year versus 6 or 8 like they had last year. That's going to be redesigned 5th generation iPad to look like the iPad mini, but bigger, of course, which is like a whole new tooling process, and potentially the Mac Pro. So when you look at it, profits this year in terms of marginal profit on the revenue is going to be much higher than last year, because they're not redesigning their products. They're doing modified, same design launches type of things, and they're basically focusing on the internals. So I think that's going to be a good thing for investors. People are complaining, that they're not redesigning anything. Where's their innovation going? So they're always going to find something to complain about, even if they're getting what they've been asking for. So it will be interesting to see on both sides of the argument.
Yeah, I think this past quarter is all about fixing the problems with constraint that we've seen in the past quarter or so. Things are very readily available. Apple on the Apple.com website, they're really bragging about next day delivery or so with iPhones. So I think that's going to be something that we see with the announcement of how the finances were. Constraint won't be an issue this time.
I agree.
Yeah. I think also that the other thing, Mark, you kind of touched upon this, is the potential investor questions. Beyond kind of the same questions that they asked last quarter, it seems like they're really going to be stuck in terms of what they're going to ask, just because Apple really hasn't come up with too much. So I think most of the questions will be what the heck happened this quarter, rather than forward-looking.
I'm expecting that. It'll be so interesting to see how Tim and Peter, and who else is on the call? My friends Tim and Peter. CFO Peter Oppenheimer and CEO Tim Cook. They react to those questions. Are they going to ignore those questions? I think I'm willing to bet they already have a pre-written, typed out response already. It's 3 weeks out, but they have that already written about exactly what they're going to read when that question comes up. We had a great Q1. We redesigned all these products. It's the most prolific period in Apple's history. They put that in every press release for the last 6 months or so. Oh my god. So yeah, they're going to just probably stick to that. And I don't think we're really going to see anything this month. There's really nothing on the radar. I more said they could, if the iPad was ready, they would do it this month, but we don't know if the iPads are ready. So we'll see. And that's really the only thing I can think of, unless there's some software surprise. In terms of software, I would highly doubt that we'd see OS 10 or iOS this month. I think we'd probably see a Pro Suite update, if anything. Or iLife, iWork. Because right now I think we're on iWork 2009 on OS 10. We'll see.
Yep.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, iWork 09.
Welcome, Dan. I don't know if you're... Oh, there you are.
Hey, Dan.
I forgot my Google password and had to reset it by the time I was done.
That's always my first 5 minutes of use.
That's why you have to only use Apple products.
So shameful.
Well, we started
I
talking
apologize.
about the financial results. Let's run into the iOS 7. So there was a really popular branch conversation discussing what's happening with iOS 7, what's kind of happening with Apple in general right now. And one of the things that was most interesting is that there was rumors that the 10.9 developers are actually being pulled over to work on iOS 7, just like what happened when the iPad was originally being worked on. So I guess what do we think of these delays? Is it that Apple will put off 10.9, and that's maybe why we haven't heard about it?
Okay, can I jump in on this one because I have a lot of opinion on this branch.
Was it iPhone or iPad first off when they first delayed the team?
Well, they delayed Leopard for the iPhone.
2007.
Yeah, it was for the first iPhone. Okay, just making sure.
So this branch, first of all, I thought this was really interesting. Like, Branch is a great site. They're doing some great stuff there. I'm a really big fan of the product. It was really intriguing to me how many writers, I mean, I respect all of these people and know them all pretty well. So it was interesting to me that all these writers came out of the woodwork to put their scoops on Branch.
Yeah.
And putting them on their websites. I mean, I'm not really going to comment on that further, but, you know, if I had something to say, I'd put it on 9to5Mac and, you know, roll from there. Of course, if it's something that hasn't already been said. So jumping into that, there was John Gruber said that, you know, iOS 7's delayed. They're pulling resources from 10.9 and such and such and such and such. And he was talking about how some Apple engineers, they had a film on their iPhone screen. You know, like when you go to the bank and you go up to your teller or something, they have a special thing so you can't see what's going on their display. So that's what he was talking about. So when they're walking around using their iPhone or iPad or whatnot, iPod Touch, someone can't see. And, you know, that logically means big interface overhauls. What I've heard is that it's not a complete user interface overhaul. It's, I'd say, think podcasts, what is it, 1.2? They scrapped some of the stuff they didn't like. They're moving into this new Johnny Ive design direction, but they kept the overall feel. That doesn't mean they're going to add a ton of new features in iOS 7, but that also doesn't mean they're going from Mac OS 9 to Mac OS 10 type of thing, you know? So, yeah, so when you look at it like OS 10.0 and OS 10.8, they look pretty similar. And in regards to pulling resources from 10.9 onto iOS, 2 comments. First, Craig Federighi, he oversees both sides of the Apple software ecosystem now. It makes sense that he would pull over guys if 10.9 is already done and ready to roll, pull over resources from there and put them on iOS 7, which in terms of product revenue and profits and all that stuff, is clearly the priority for Apple. And to answer your question about, is that why we haven't seen 10.9 yet? I think I've said this before, but I don't believe we've seen 10.9 yet, is because Apple's software right now, iOS 6 and Mountain Lion, they're on a very level playing field. They both have similar feature sets, and basically Mountain Lion has desktop versions of iOS 6 features, and iOS 6 has mobile versions of Mountain Lion features. And when they announced Mountain Lion in February 2012, last year, they didn't announce any new functionality. It was just modified versions of iPhone and iPad features that already existed. And since they're on a level playing field, it's safe to assume iOS 7 and 10.9 will pick up similar features. Now, my theory is if they had a 10.9 preview prior to WWDC when they were going to announce iOS 7, they'd be essentially giving away all the iOS 7 features. Since the two operating systems are going to be so aligned, it makes so much more sense to announce them simultaneously or right after another at the June WWDC event. Just because Apple doesn't preview 10.9 in February 2013 doesn't mean it's not going to come out in June, July, or August of 2013. They already promised year-over-year updates, sort of like they've been doing with iOS. So I don't doubt 10.9 is coming. I don't believe either operating system is delayed. And it's just natural Apple work to pull resources from a finished product onto the more important product. It's nothing's being shelved. It's just stuff being moved around. And nor do I believe it's going to be a huge interface overhaul. Another thing I disagree with is people saying because, you know, a lot of shifts in terms of the executive ranks, like getting rid of Scott Forstall was a big deal. Everything got moved around. This guy, you know, he covered so much of the company, 70% of the revenues, and because he's gone, it might move things around. You know, I would think that iOS 7 would have been finished before Forstall was left the company because he wasn't a good collaborator. You know, so it seems pretty late in the game in terms of Apple's roadmaps. Here we are hearing about that story, how Steve Jobs already designed the next iPhone and the iPhone after the next iPhone, yet you're telling me iOS 7 is going to be delayed because a guy was fired 6 months before it's scheduled to be announced? Doesn't make too much sense to me. I think him being fired would change some design direction or some, direction in terms of what they want to do with the OS, but I think things should have been so set in stone already that Johnny Ive's major changes won't even come into play until a year from now or a year after from now. And quite frankly, if I was an investor or an analyst and iOS 7 was delayed because Forstall was fired and not in the company anymore, and he was only fired in October, I'd be beyond concerned. I'd be concerned about more than nothing else with Apple if that was true. And so I highly doubt it's true. And Dan likes talking about this stuff, so I'm sure he can attest to those concerns. Can't hear you, Dan.
I tried to unmute myself, but I think it automatically muted me again. I think it's silly to try and deduce any kind of conclusions from these little bits and pieces that we get from analysts and reporters. I mean, I don't think we give Apple, the company, enough credit. It's the same thing when there's random reports that Apple's kind of cutting down on their supply orders. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't know what led to those decisions, and people grasp for the obvious ones that, the demand's not there for a product, or Apple's changing, putting employees onto different projects. That project must be behind. It could be that the other one is ahead of schedule, and they're moving some resources around to try and get the best players in the best place to succeed. Yeah, I think it's silly that we deduce these conclusions based on all hearsay and kind of what we think. It's tough.
Zach, do you have something to add with that as well?
Yeah, my thought is I'm thinking back to every beta release. Whenever after iOS is announced at WWDC, there are so many intervals of betas that take so long to fix, it almost feels like every time iOS gets worse before it gets better and then gets released. So I do think that these things run pretty smooth in terms of development, but I think it does take many hours, a lot of time to get smoothed out. So it is, even though it should have been well in the works whenever Forstall was fired, I think these things are worked on until the very last hour. So that's my big thought, though, is just that every beta takes so long to get perfect after it's announced that the actual development stage that we're in right now, I can see it being delayed and not where they want it to be up to parity yet.
I disagree, Zach, respectfully,
okay.
Of course. I know for a fact, like 10.8.3, that came out in March. That came out 2 weeks ago. 10.8.3, the first beta, was in beta within Apple 2 months before the developers got the first beta. And right now we're like on beta 1 of 10.8.4. They might already be using the third or fourth beta. They keep betas within themselves internally before they roll them out. Quite frankly, they could be using iOS 7 beta 2 right now, even though beta 1 hasn't even been issued. So,
Right.
And I want Dan to talk about this more because I think it's a real concern for me, and I know Dan's fond of this investor concerns topics. So if iOS 7 wasn't finished before Forstall was fired, would that not concern you? I mean, this was literally 6 months ago.
No, absolutely. And I think Renee Ritchie mentioned it on the chat thread where it wouldn't be that severe of a thing. I mean, they have the basis for this iOS. It's not like they're recreating it from the ground up like the first time when they had delays. Right. If they're not ready, they're not going to delay it. They're just going to push some of the more ambitious features off to the next release.
Yeah, Renee said it well. Plus, if this is just one guy, like they have 2,000 people who interact with iOS at Apple. 2,000 employees working on this operating system, and they just got rid of the puppet master. They have other people. They have people stepping up, and I, quite frankly, I think this is going to work out for the better.
I might be selfish in this, but I still want my little Apple TV, my upgraded TV system with an SDK, whatever else it is. So that obviously was never mentioned in the branch where the TV developers are, and I can only imagine it's a small group compared to iOS, but where the heck are they? I guess, Mark, what do you think that they're just in their own group, kind of like a Google X kind of thing?
Ooh, the TV stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know. The TV is interesting. I think it's probably been shelved and unshelled multiple times. We'll see. I mean, the way Apple products are developed, I mean, it's not just like a team that develops a product. There's tons of teams that work together, and you can see this no more in terms of the recent collaboration initiative that they have been working on. Like, you take an iPhone. Before Forstall was like trying to run the whole iPhone team. Like, literally, this guy, he ran the wireless components, and he even embedded himself in the hardware components.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mansfield has all the hardware and the wireless to himself. Craig Federighi doesn't touch that. Craig Federighi touches human interface type of stuff with Johnny Ive's assistants and the OS APIs and core features and stuff. And, of course, you have Eddie Q, who works on the services aspect. So I think they know what they're doing, and I think the TV, of course, it would probably be their next big thing or the big thing after the next big thing. It's going to require lots of company collaboration. So I don't think it's like a Google X spin-off. I think it's probably, I mean, depending on how far along in development they are, surely it is or was, like you said, so I agree with you there. But if it's going to come onto the market, it's going to have to move out of that stage. Apple's not a company that where they're going to announce a product and release it 2-3 years later and not announce a price or, discontinue it a week later like Google. You never know with Google. Google glasses may never come out.
Yeah.
Even though they say it is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of having the TikTok design pattern of the iPhone, and even with the iPad 2 is kind of what the iPad 4 looks like. When you put the product on autopilot like that, you can focus on things that aren't released yet or that needs changing. So investors worry about the design like that, but when it looks like it's the same thing over and over. But I think whenever we see that, we ought to just assume that they're really innovating in the background for something else, like an Apple TV set.
And the watch, which we talked about numerous times, which I still think is going to come before the TV.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, do you think the watch or the TV, is that going to be like a one more thing?
I would think that would be a big event. Like I think if there was a watch event, I think it would be like that's the kind of thing that gets hinted at on the invitation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they'd have a creative invitation for it.
Yeah.
Check your
Come
time.
watch us.
Remember the invitation for the Beatles announcement? They could reuse that one with the hands.
Oh yeah.
That was the best day of my life.
You'll never forget this day. Which I still don't remember what day it was, but
November something, 2010.
Yeah.
I remember. It was the day that everyone forgot.
yeah.
I remember.
Hey, I like the Beatles.
There was so much speculation about what it was going to be.
Cloud.
Everyone likes the Beatles, but I mean, come on. That was a lot of hype for getting them onto iTunes.
I mean, it is a pretty big deal. I guess it was like they said this in the Steve Jobs bio. It was like the culmination of everything that Steve Jobs had been working up to.
Yeah.
So I guess it was big to him.
It was big to him, and who's Apple? Apple is Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Is Bob Dylan on iTunes?
Yeah, I mean, he was on Steve would always play Bob Dylan at the keynotes.
Right.
Beatles too, even before they won.
I bought some Bob on iTunes before. AC/DC didn't get a very big. They didn't get any press whenever they
got a press. They got a press release.
Yeah, but they didn't get like the Beatles hype.
No, I mean
AC/DC, so.
It's also not the Beatles. I mean,
The other one to fall this year was Kid Rock.
Mm.
Who?
Who's left? Garth Brooks isn't on iTunes.
What about Bon Jovi? He hates iTunes, right?
I don't get how anyone would just say no to iTunes completely. I feel like that's a lot of stuff that you don't.
It's going to be very interesting because I was doing some research on this for like a class report, and the streaming services world, it's tough out there for the music makers and for the providers and all that. It's tough. I can see why, based on what I've read, why Apple is having such a hard time. You don't want to be an artist on a streaming music service. You're basically just getting screwed over for no benefit. So if Apple pulls this off, damn, it's going to be.
See, how I see it, this is my opinion on with the music industry, but I really think that for the most part, music through sales or through online distribution should be a good way to get your name out there. And then concerts is where the majority of the money should really come from, especially when they're charging $50 to $150 to $200 for a ticket. So I really see it. I mean, there are some artists that put their music onto a torrent for free, or they put it on SoundCloud for free, whatever else it is, and that's how they get their publicity.
Or
and
throw flash drives with their
tickets.
songs into bathroom stalls.
There's John Roderick, who does a podcast called Roderick on the Line. He's also a musician primarily, and he had a really good idea for how to make money with music. On day one, your biggest fans are lining up to buy your record, and they'll pay any amount of money for it. In most cases, they'll pay $100. So they don't care. They just want to support you and have that on day one. And on like the second week, make it $10. You want to be able to make as much money in the first week as possible, and your fans are going to be loyal to you and give you that money. So there's definitely opportunity for a shake-up, and even with iTunes on how they release music. Instead of giving it away for free on day one or letting you listen to it for free, they could have higher prices in the beginning. And if you want to wait a week or two to have it for cheaper, then you can. But I know there's just a few bands that I like that I would pay extra to have early.
Yeah, but that's when people are going to say, I'm not paying that. I really like the band. I'm going to listen to the music. Let me go torrent it.
Yeah, but if it's a band that you really like I might have three that I really would pay extra for. Even though the torrent's available, I may get the torrent a week early and
those
then buy it.
mediocre bands. That's when they lose out on the money because you just go and torrent it.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the goodies here. So the Facebook phone. So we had a good scoop. Mark had a good scoop with HTC and Facebook coming together to kind of build this new phone. I'm not sure, Mark. We had EV Leaks who
right. We had
about
the first story, which I wrote, which was that Facebook is launching a tweaked version of Android on top of an HTC built phone that looks like an iPhone, has mid-range specs, and they were going to have this crazy ad campaign, as you saw during the event yesterday, and there'll be more
crazy indeed. That's ridiculous.
And we followed up that it was going to be called Facebook Home. And then EV Leaks, he posted on 9to5 Google that pictures of the actual handset, the HTC First, running the Facebook Home tweaked Android operating system that we previously described. So I think we did well in that regard, and we'll have more in the future, and we'll have some more details about EV Leaks in the next few days. So stay tuned.
Actually, while I was watching the announcement, MG Siegler was saying that the little mock-up that they were using kind of looked like an iPhone, and then when he retweeted that one of his
it wasn't a mock-up. Everyone thought it was a mock-up, and
well, yeah. It looked actually then like an iPod Touch because of how the volume buttons were, but then it turns out to be the HTC First.
Right. I mean, of course, we knew this beforehand because it was posted it, but yeah, I thought the phone. I think the hardware looks very nice. I mean, of course, it looks nice. It looks like an iPhone clone. Of course, I'm an Apple fanboy, so I naturally like. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think it looks nice. It kind of looks like the fusion between an HTC One, a 5th Gen iPod Touch, and an iPhone 5. And I think I'm really happy for Facebook. Like, I find it actually, just like a little quick aside here, Mark Zuckerberg keeps saying, we're not building a phone. Everyone's saying, oh, Facebook didn't build a phone. You know what? If the phone has a Facebook logo in equal size to the HTC logo on the back of the phone, and you're telling me you're not building a phone, I don't want to talk to you. Because you have your logo on a phone, you announced it at your event, how could you say that you're not building a phone? Okay?
Where's the Facebook button?
So everyone can shut up about that.
Buttons aren't cool anymore.
The button's
Facebook
out.
is too cool for buttons.
I think the button thing, I mean, they got a lot of bad press for that. Like the phones that had Facebook buttons, like they shattered and crumbled. So I think they
worked at Radio Shack when the HTC status came out with the Facebook button, and we had customers that would come in and they would see the big sign on the door and they'd be like, "Do people really buy that? Is that like a real thing?" The customers were making fun of it.
It's not a good idea.
Did people actually buy it? Mike?
I did not hear any of that.
Did people actually buy that phone?
No, I don't think we ever sold one.
It's not a good idea because, I mean, if you were like Twitter and you update your logo every 6 months, then your phone hardware won't be up to standards.
We're gonna have to cut off access to your phone now.
Yeah. Let's talk about how Facebook was talking up Android the whole time and saying how open Android is. So there were a lot of people that were saying the only loser yesterday, not HTC, not AT&T, not Facebook, not Google. The only loser was Apple. And I didn't really get that. I think some other people were right in saying that kind of it was a loss for Microsoft, or maybe it was even, because Microsoft likes to say that they go people first. They were actually targeting Facebook, saying that all of their keynote was exactly like their announcements. But was it really, Dan, do you think it was a loss for Apple at all?
No, not at all. Period.
Yeah, my thoughts on this is at the end of the day, Mark Zuckerberg still uses an iPhone. He said as much, I think Elise had a post with comments from him that he gave to Wired. He still uses an iPhone. In the Verge hands-on video, they were talking to the designer, and they asked him if this is his main phone, and reluctantly, and he said yes, but it sounded like that was what he was supposed to say, and he felt wrong saying that.
In that video, he actually pulled out an iPhone 5 to compare the size of the HTC. So there you go.
Well, let's actually. Okay, so yeah, they were definitely talking up open Android, and there were a lot of people like saying that Apple was at loss, but I don't really see that. But we were talking about this last week, how it could be another fork of Android, just kind of like how Amazon is working. But it seems like it's kind of Google does benefit more from it, just because they're replacing the launcher, but they're not replacing the actual operating system completely. So I guess it's more of a statement than a question. But let's get into also, there were some people saying...
That's a technical thing, though, because if I handed that phone to someone who has no idea what Android is, or like the technical side of it, and I handed them that phone, and then I handed them a Galaxy Nexus, and I told them that this is the same operating system, would they believe me?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But at least they're able to still access the Play Store.
There's, what, 500 tech bloggers and 6 billion people in the world? I mean,
and you can, if you have the Facebook Home launcher, you can totally get rid of that and have any number of launchers found in the Play Store. When I used to have an Android phone, that was one of the most fun things, was trying to find a launcher that looked most like iOS.
You had an Android phone?
I had a Galaxy S1 and a launcher that was way too much of a copy of iOS.
I don't know if I could talk to you anymore.
It's okay.
I just unfollowed them.
Yeah.
Kick him from the Hangout, please.
I don't blame you.
I owned an Android phone for one day.
A thought that I had, though, from watching the event last week, I really thought that the software would be optimized for low-skill users, that the phone would be good for people that don't have smartphones but use Facebook. When I saw the launcher, it's really confusing to me. I'd feel lost and a little bit anxious using that launcher. So I think they're missing an opportunity there in terms of appealing to anybody. They're not appealing to low-end users because of the learning curve. They're not appealing to tech people because it doesn't support widgets. I mean, I don't know who the audience is.
People. I mean, Zuckerberg keeps saying this. They want the best Facebook experience on all devices.
Yeah, but to interrupt you real quickly, I don't think that's the best Facebook experience, because if I own that phone, I would go past the lock screen and straight to the Facebook app, because I don't want a curated version of Facebook.
But let me finish. The best experience on any platform. When you look on what they've done on each platform, they've done the best and most integrated experience they possibly can on every platform. Let me walk you through this. On the computer, the web browser is the best way to access Facebook, because it's the Facebook website. All their functionality is there. You have more stuff you could do on the web than if it was like a Mac app or a PC app. On Windows Phone, they have their Facebook app and they have their live tiles. And in terms of the Windows operating system on the phone, the live tile is the best way they can integrate Facebook. On iOS, they're deeply embedded into the system, and they have their app, which they're consistently improving. They issue an update every 4 to 6 weeks or so. And so they have the best of all worlds in those platforms. Android, they didn't really take advantage of what you can do on Android until they've really integrated themselves into like as MGC called it, a spooned version of Android. So.
But in Android,
they're taking advantage of what they can do in every platform, and I think that's great. And I think Facebook investors should be happy because they're really doing what they need to do.
Yeah, but like the iOS style sharing, like we see on the iPhone where you can share to Facebook, that's been in Android a lot longer because they don't have restrictions for that. They can share from just about any service.
Right. But my point is they're doing the best and most they can depending on their restrictions.
I think what we're seeing is they're doing a great job at branding the phone as Facebook. I don't think it's the best Facebook experience. I think it's a lot like using Flipboard to read 9to5Mac. I mean, you're getting a weird, very visually appealing version, but it's not like straight content. Where if you're using the Facebook app, you're getting straight content, and you can kind of see what you like a lot better rather than having it served to you.
From a business perspective, I'm not sure they're hitting on the right demographic. I mean, who's on these Android devices? It's techies, some people who got some free Androids at the store. They're cheaper. The people who are obsessed with Facebook and on them all the time, soccer moms, younger girls, all those types of people are pretty much on iOS. I think they may be missing the mark.
Well, they have no choice, though.
I mean, I know.
Zuckerberg was saying that it's above his pay grade to say when the iPhone will have Facebook Home.
That's so funny.
It's never going to happen.
Because there's not too many people above that pay grade.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. I mean, come on.
Well, it's not going to happen, but I think at least Facebook needs to have higher, it can have higher integration.
In what? In iOS?
Yeah.
Like what?
For example.
I mean, stuff like having it where you kind of have your, like on your lock screen, you have photos appear. If Facebook were to, or if Apple were to allow something like that.
I actually
like a Facebook screensaver.
No, I actually see that as plausible. Not kidding.
No, I see that where PhotoStream would come first. I think actually PhotoStream would be pretty cool if shared PhotoStream showed up.
So if they're not even doing PhotoStream, maybe they'll do it in an iOS update. You can do PhotoStream or Facebook. Like
I think the hardware needs to improve first because that's a battery life drain.
Yes, battery.
Even if it's minimal, even if it's 5% less battery over an hour, that's.
Well, how is the HTC first doing that? The first has got to do that.
It's a compromise. I mean, it's not a good idea if you're efficient.
Comparing an battery to an iPhone battery, and like we know what Apple's priorities are.
Yeah.
It's always 73 degrees and sunny, and you know why that is.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about that before, where the battery life is really the part where even since the beginning of the first iPhone, there's been increases, and especially we're still getting the same good battery life with LTE and all the other fun stuff that's been added, but we still haven't seen like a dramatic increase where we suddenly go from 8 hours of supposed battery life, which right now I'm down to 4% battery right now, or jumping all the way to 24 hours, which supposedly I think what the Droid Max HD.
Yeah, 32 hours.
With like 4 X's.
Yeah. Whatever it is, supposedly that has 24 hours of battery life. But even for us, I mean, that's a massive phone, massive battery. But
yeah, I was going to say, how big's that phone?
According to some reviewers, the iPhone 5 has infinite battery life. Right, Zach?
No comment.
What did you say, Mark?
Nothing.
I have zero issues with battery life on my iPhone. Zero.
I would
never ever complain.
I'm not 100% right now.
Well, that's because you're plugged in.
Mine's plugged into a charger.
I forgot my charger at home. I forgot my charger at home, and of course now I don't have any battery.
I find that if you have a cradle dock, you charge more often.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
There's some good deals on those over at 9to5Toys.
No,
let's go back to
on
Facebook Home really quick, and then we'll
I feel like it's I feel like the equivalent of Facebook Home on Apple would be Flyover and Maps. It's really designed to show it off, but using it, it's not the best way to be practical, to be productive.
It's like CoverFlow.
I mean, it's like it looks good in the keynote, but in your hand when you're using it with no one looking at you. Yeah, it's like CoverFlow.
It's a shame they don't have CoverFlow on the iPad. That would be awesome.
No, worthless. All right.
Another thing
One more
on
question
Facebook Home that I'd like to know. Okay.
Well, Zach, go ahead. I don't know why you're so delayed.
Okay, that's weird. I was just going to say, I don't know. Can you change your wallpaper on the Facebook Home Launcher? That's a big deal for personalization, is to have a wallpaper that you like. But with Facebook Home, it looks like the wallpaper is whatever your friends are posting. That's your live wallpapers are their photos.
I think there's two different screens of wallpaper. I think one of them is what you choose. I think, okay, when your phone is like in lock screen mode, like on the lock screen, it swipes through your Facebook photos and status updates and whatnot. But when you're on like the home screen after you've unlocked the phone, then I think it's a solid wallpaper and you have more choice. Because I noticed that wallpaper didn't change during the demos. Only the lock screen one did.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, let's go one more question.
Yeah.
Should Apple go people first?
Should what?
Can you repeat?
Should Apple go people first? So there was the whole theory where usually apps allow you access to people, and so if you want to access one person, you have to go into multiple apps to find out more about that person. But in this case, how Facebook was trying to purport it is that they're putting people first, and then you access apps below that. The only problem that I saw, the flaw that I saw in that theory, is that they only saw that the only social app is Facebook. So they're pretty much saying, open up the Facebook app, and then you have access to people, which it's just, I don't get really how it's not one less click, or it's just making it so you don't have to open the app. But you still can't get access to that person's Twitter. You can't get access to any of their Pinterest or whatever else that they're doing. Which actually, in that sense, that's why Windows Phone might be even already more mature for a people-first phone, because they already have those integrations. Whereas this is just Facebook saying, well, if you want to see somebody's social life, their whole entire social life is on Facebook.
I doubt it. Apple's terrible at social. Like Ping.
Okay.
I think my thoughts are that Apple does a better job of people first by putting the options for me to connect with people in different ways first. Facebook's people first method is Facebook first, and if the people are there, great. If they're not there, too bad.
That was one question that I did want to bring up. Google's reaction, should Google even be social? Like, that's one question I have. Where do they really? Now they're kind of having a conflict with Facebook, where they want Google Plus to be up front, especially in Android. And so obviously they're allowing Facebook Home in their Play Store. But should it be that Google is still going for social? Should they? It seems like they've kind of toned down Google Plus and how much they've been pushing it. But is it that Google should really focus more on providing the core services rather than pushing for their full social service? Whoever wants to chime in. Dan, you want to say anything with that?
No, because I was formulating a tweet to send out and I wasn't listening to you. Sorry.
I would appreciate another version of that question.
Should Google be social? Should they be providing social services?
Hey, we're on it right now.
I know Seth brought that up yesterday. But see, the weird thing is that I see Hangouts as more of a productivity tool rather than a social tool. Like, I've only used this the first day Hangouts came out. I used it for like a social gathering. But since then, I've always used it for work or for these Hangouts or podcasts or anything. So I've never actually used it as a social tool to say, hey, let's have a Hangout today at 5 o'clock.
That's a really good point, because I think they do market it as social. I think they would be better leveraged to market it as a productivity tool. To say, look, for free, you can get all of these services. You can do your meetings. You can that would be a really good idea versus saying bring your friends to this Google Hangout and have a warm, cheery moment.
Like a go-to meeting competitor?
Yeah, because people don't have Google accounts. I mean, people do. They don't realize it, though. Like, for example, when I have to log in and try my password 17,000 times, that's because I don't use these services on a regular basis once a week for this. I mean,
YouTube, you send me YouTube links all the time. I
signed in once and it stays there,
Okay, whatever. So like YouTube is inherently social, Google Docs is inherently social, but at the same time, you can think of all these Google services as either social or as productivity tools or both. And I think Google puts them out there, and people are free to do whatever they want to do with them. And I think that's really the magic to Google, and it's really like their philosophy. Even at the top of the company, they make it this great Android operating system, and their philosophy is, hey, take whatever you want from our Android operating system and spoon it or fork it and do whatever you want to it. And they're happy.
I want to
with that.
knife it.
Yeah.
You know what's weird? I actually don't see YouTube as a social site.
You don't
Really?
Which is really strange. But when I go on there, I mean, it's comments from random trolls and people that want to.
Well, like video is social inherently, like posting videos up, and like Facebook.
But then you talk about them elsewhere, so I kind of see it as a tool.
Google owns Blogger.com, do they not? Or
They do, but aren't they trying to shut it down?
Doesn't matter. It's still social, but I think it's social, and I think.
Well, we know that they're pushing for
so many social things. So like Google's inherently a social company and a productivity company, and I think it's great. Like I really like this discussion because it shows like how versatile Google is as a company. And when you look at Apple, you can't say the same. You can't say the same. Yeah.
I think that what we're learning here is that the internet is inherently social because it connects all of us, and that's what we're getting down to. Is YouTube's online, it connects us. It's social. The iPhone is how iMessage is social. I mean, that's probably like my most actively used way to connect with people is via iMessage. I think that's social.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, let's remember that the lines are blurring between productivity and business tools and consumer tools. It's called the consumerization of IT. Everything is coming down the consumer level. I mean, look at the BYOD initiatives at enterprises, and look at the tools that people are using. People are using iCloud accounts in businesses now.
That's unfortunate for those businesses.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's the consumerization of IT, and it's happening. So the line is blurred now between business tools and your consumer tools.
Well, there was an article yesterday talking about how a lot of companies are finding themselves in a kind of a pickle where Windows is not being dominant anymore and Office isn't being dominant anymore, and instead you're finding iOS and Android. But all these companies that expect that they can just magically move over to enterprise, to providing server services, they are behind, in that sense, behind Google and Apple as well, because Google and Apple have built all of these data centers to have massive amounts of information, and then for Dell to just jump in, they'll be so far behind because Apple's like, oh, we already have our own solutions for data centers. We know how to do these now. So I'm trying to think of where I was going with all of it. But all these companies right now are just trying to figure out when it comes to, okay, all these companies, that's what I was saying. Okay, bring your own device. All these employees are bringing in Apple iPhones and Androids, and a lot of the manufacturers are losing out. And it'd be weird to see how if they try to push more to be still consumer, or if they're pushing more to provide the back-end services.
Well, it's clear Apple's moving away from the business crowd.
Oh yeah.
They axe the Xserve, the MacBook Pros the Mac Pros on life support.
But they still know how to do data centers, even if they're using Windows' operating system. Their Windows Azure. Azure. One of those words that you just see it, but apparently I don't know how to pronounce it. So they know, though, how to build data centers, how to make them sustainable even now. And they know how to make it so that it is energy efficient, which is one of the main things with data centers nowadays. So Apple, even though they're moving away from selling enterprise, they know how to do it themselves.
And that's the answer, because most companies are moving all their equipment off-site anyways. They're not owning the hardware. They're not owning the racks of servers anymore. They're pushing it all to off-site locations. So yeah. I think it's less important. So as long as those companies who do the data centers know how to do it, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And HP, Dell, Cisco are all going to dominate in that space always.
You think Dell even?
Their servers, they do. HP, Dell, they're rack servers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Especially since the Xserve is no longer.
Yep.
And I think they're going to stop service for that pretty soon too, Mark, right? What was the limit on that for the Xserve?
I don't think they're stopping service. I think they're just stop selling them, right?
But yeah, they put.
They might
thought it was like a 3 or 4 year support on it.
Maybe you're right, actually. I think you're 3-year, and that would be coming up soon.
Something
I don't know.
like that, yeah.
We'll see.
But you still got the Mac Mini server.
Right, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do later this year. From an investor perspective, in your opinion, do you think that is that a bad question? Are you allowed to answer this?
No, I can answer.
What do you? Go ahead, caller. What do you think of moving more into the consumer market? Like, it's clearly that Apple's kind of moving away from the pro market and really trying to blur the lines, like you said, between prosumer, consumer, and pro users. So, what do you think about that from that angle of investors looking at Apple? Is it the right move to really put all the focus on consumers? I think so, because there's more of them giving up on the professionals. Or is the lines in terms of work life blurring between that as well, and it can become a bad thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it all hinges on what we were saying before, the BYOD initiatives. People bring in their own laptops, computers, and companies love it because they don't have to make that initial capital investment and buy their employees smartphones and tablets anymore, because they want to bring their iPads to work. They want to use the ones that they already own. And ignoring the business customers and going over to the consumers, I mean, just like you said, they're a smaller part of the market. You don't have to cater to them. And I think we're at a point in technology where you don't have to have a different product for pro users and the consumers. I mean, look at how powerful everything is now. You don't need a clear line where this is if you're using it for business, this is if you're using it for consumers. Everything is really powerful now, and you can pretty much get all tasks done on them. Look at the iMac. The iMac is a perfect.
Yeah,
you can use it. You can use it for just web browsing, or you can use it for the most extreme productivity tasks when video editing. So I think that they're covering all their bases on it, and I think it's getting less important. But I don't think it's a cause for concern at all.
Yeah, I think the disappearance of the white MacBook was really a big example of illustrating that point, that everything is, Apple's line is very powerful and can be used by anybody, whether it's for fun or for business.
And in history, that Apple has always been very important in the education market, not in business. And they're still rocking out in education.
Yeah, the iPad's nuts in education right now. Like, I went back to my elementary school. Like, elementary school, when was I there? Years ago, okay?
A couple years ago.
It used to be like beige Macs when I went to school there, in elementary school. They have no more computer lab. They have iPad carts.
Mm-hmm.
And the school computer lab teacher or whatnot is now the iPad person. So it's awesome. Yeah.
They're ludicrous too. They'll go out and they'll buy 200 to 300 new iPads for a couple grades, and they don't even know what to do with them. They just know they have to have them. It's hot in education right now. We have to have them. Let's get them. I mean, my full-time job, I work directly with schools with Apple devices, and a lot of them, they don't know what to use them for. They just know they have to have them, and that's what they do because it looks great to the town, the parents. Their students are getting in with the technology and everything like that. They just don't know how to integrate them into the curriculum. They don't. Or if they do, they're just using it in traditional ways, just in electronic form. They're not actually using it in a transformational way.
Yeah, that's the thing about the iPad is you can buy it and not know what it's for, and that's okay, because you're going to find a way to use it. I mean, it's got an infinite possibilities, nearly. I don't know if that's mathematically accurate or not, but I mean that's
it's probably not infinite, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with it.
It's magical.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you guys for joining us for today's 9 to 5 happy hour. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we'll be on the 9 to 5 vids account again next week. But if you guys want to find us on Twitter, I'm sure we'll all be tweeting out each other's usernames, which I think we did earlier. So that way we can follow each other if we'd like. So thank you guys very much.
9 to 5 Toys.